Hello, my name is Ishan. Welcome to my rhetorical analysis video. Today I'm going to be comparing the two infographics I made. Um, the first one is a little infographic on how to set up a dual monitor workstation with a Dell computer. And my second one is a workplace safety infographic, which basically tells you the essential precautions for project engineers when they are on site. To start off, who are the intended audiences for each of these infographics? The first infographic is basically for new hires or new project managers that are working in the office. They're going to do the majority of their work inside, not on a construction site, and they're going to be working with software like Bluebeam and Procore. So it's essential that they have two monitors so they can look at subcontractor notes on one monitor and their actual Bluebeam slash CAD software on another monitor. This is something that I helped set up when I was an intern at Clark Construction over the summer. So it's something that I'm very familiar with. This next infographic, the workplace safety on site, let me just scroll down so you can see all of it, is basically for anyone working on site, but it's specifically geared toward project engineers because they are the ones that spend a lot of time on site. Not that project managers don't, it's just that project engineers spend maybe 75% of their time on site. And they basically go on all floors of the building. And depending on the project you're on, you might be outside, you might be inside, you might be surrounded by all kinds of heavy machinery. So it's very important to be careful. These two audiences are related because they are working on the same project. But the main difference here is that one of them is on site most of the time, and the other one's inside an office most of the time. However, they both work on the same project. Now, let's talk about the design features. Here, it's pretty simple. This one is a step-by-step instruction guide on how to set up a dual monitor workstation. So I numbered them. Originally on my draft, I didn't have the numbers there, but I feel like on any step-by-step instruction guide, it's good to have the numbers there. So yeah, here they are, steps labeled 1 through 5, you know, basically spelling out how to attach a dual monitor workstation. Pretty simple steps with some nice images um, with each step, as you can see right there. And for this one, I have dark text on the light background. And then for this one, it's just an informative infographic. No steps or anything. It's just infographic with just a bunch of information. And I split it up into 5 key segments: PPE, hydration, equipment inspection, hazard communication, and emergency preparation. These are all things that are all points that are very important for a project engineer to keep in mind when they're on site. Because if you fail to keep one of these points in mind, you can be putting yourself in some real danger. And I have in this one light text on a dark background. To be completely honest, I just did that to switch things around. Me personally, I think that light text on a dark background is easier to read, but at the end of the day, that's like personal preference. This is an infographic that project engineers could potentially take on site with them. So I think it's very important to make sure that it's easy to read. And I feel as if it's easy to read. And I do have helpful infographics, not infographics, helpful images next to each point. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about for my rhetorical analysis is information that I chose to include and information that I chose to omit. For this first one, I obviously wanted to include every step of the monitor setup, every physical step that you need to do, such as unplugging the PC, laying out the cords, laying out the HDMI cords that you need, like identifying where to plug in each wire, attaching it securely at a decent height, plugging in the monitor, not the monitors, plugging in the wires, and then turning on the monitor at the end. These are all physical steps that you need to do to ensure that the monitor turns on. What I didn't include is display setting display setting configurations because I know that everybody has their own personal preferences with display settings. And I know that everyone has different kinds of monitors with different refresh rates. So there's a lot of settings that you can mess around with in there. This infographic is just geared towards setting up the workstation. For this one, when it comes to on-site safety, there are a lot of things you can talk about, right? Every piece of machinery, like a forklift, a crane, um, I'm blanking on other examples, but every single piece of equipment has an entire laundry list of safety protocols to follow. Obviously, that's impossible to put on a single infographic here, so I chose to focus on the main points that project engineers should focus on. Um, I don't think a project engineer will ever operate a forklift, so I didn't really include that, but that is something to keep in mind for regular laborers. I focused on safety points that are important to project engineers. Basically, what they do is they go around the construction site and make inspections, talk to subcontractors, and talk to superintendents. So basically, for that, you're just walking around. So it's important to just wear your personal protective equipment, stay hydrated, inspect faulty equipment thoroughly. Like if someone comes to you with a faulty equipment, you want to inspect it thoroughly so that they're not in danger. It's important to understand hazard signage and be familiar with first aid. These are the main points that you should focus on. I chose to omit all the other safety protocols of all the other equipment. One, because it's a lot of space to put on a small infographic, and two, for the most part, a project engineer won't have to deal with that stuff. They just have to deal with this stuff. So that's the stuff that I kept. Um, and I think that about covers everything I needed to talk about in the rhetorical analysis. Let me just confirm. Yeah, and that's about it. Thanks for listening. Have a good one.